Hello and welcome. This is Jim Coppin with Rankin Technical College. I wanted to spend just a few minutes going over the hands-on test for the fifth one, which is basically a 200 point one. So this is significant, and it will impact your grade tremendously. So you really want to make sure you do a good job on this. This is going to be just in the continuation of the Hot 3. So you just want to go ahead and update your app in the Hot 3 folder. And then as far as the different criteria and your screens, so you've got a lot of latitude, a lot of flexibility on creating your screens and how you want them to look. So they don't have to be complicated, don't make it too complicated for yourself, but make sure that you're follow and you meet all the different criteria. So I'm basically just going to go down this list of all this criteria, and either you went ahead and implemented it or you didn't. Okay. Did want to point out a couple things here. Yeah, so you'll have to have something where you have some kind of a link to your own profile, because you're going to be editing your own profile. So so that's calling the me one, which was in the back end. And also, I wanted to kind of mention real quick, it tells you to go ahead and use React Toastify. And then it's make sure you use Bootstrap validations, okay? And the way you're going to figure out which validations that you should be using is you're going to go to your back end and see what your Joy schema ones that you created. And then them ones will have the required fields, right? So if they have required fields in your schema, them are the ones you're going to want to use in your Bootstrap validation on the front end, right? Your Joy's on the back end, your Bootstrap validation is going to be on your front end. Okay, so everything else here, I guess you can just follow this. Okay. Yeah, I also do want to mention, if for some reason that the last hot you worked on for the product, this is basically the product app. If you didn't do, you might not have implemented something, or something that isn't working. You might have a little extra work to get that to work first before you go ahead and complete this front end. All right, let's look. I'm just going to point out a few things in the code here and pull that up here. Okay, on your back end, so on your back end, just want to kind of point out, don't forget about making sure that you include your front end dist directory. And if for some reason, I know some students did some different kind of front ends in their previous hots, the hot 3 did, maybe done something a little different. You may have to kind of get rid of that, blow that away, and just do the default Vite one, where you do npm create Vite at latest to recreate that. And if that's the case, then you'll need to do that. If you went ahead and did something different there. And also remember that there's some of that default code that Vite creates with the style sheets and so forth. You'll have to remove that. Kind of the same thing that you did for your 5-3 lab. You'll have to remove some of that stuff, right? Okay. So that's it for the front end. And recall, or the back end, I should say, sorry. That was for the back end. The only thing I went over there was index.js on the back end. On the front end here, always, remember you're going to have your server running, right? You're going to have your server running, and then, you'll have to make sure you do a build. If you make some changes to your build, you're going to be in the front end directory. You'll have to CD your front end directory and do your build. So what I usually do is I have my server running, right? I have my server running that I created on the back end, right? Your back end one where you do just in your root directory, and when you're in your root directory and you do the npm start dev, So you have your back-end server running, which also includes your front-end disk directory, right? I should say. But then, I always have another shell open for my front end. So if I could do npm run build to build my front end disk directory, right? So I usually always have two of them. However you want to do it, it's fine. That way I don't have to flip back and forth and stuff like that, or flip back and forth like CD back to the other one. I just have two different ones, and depends on what I'm doing. If I'm, looking at my console here, or if I'm going ahead and doing a Veep build, right? Okay, in the app.jsx file, remember, and a lot of this stuff that you're going to be doing in this hot, if you did the 5.3 lab and you were pretty successful at that, that's going to help you tremendously with this one. So, some of that code, you can kind of, take that and bring it over here. You're going to have to be careful because you've got some different routes, some different names and that. But, a lot of that code that you did for 5.3 is going to be very helpful for this, right? You're going to use your toast container. Make sure you do your npm installs of your different packages. You're going to have to make sure you include the React router DOM, your Axios, etc. Right? What else do I want to point out in here? Yes, also make sure you go ahead and do the Axios interceptor. So you want to intercept each of the things to make sure that you include your header for your token. Okay, that's very important. And also this is important as well. And then also within your login, go ahead and, it depends on how you did things. You might have did some things differently, but you want to, at some point, some places you need to go ahead and set your item in local storage, and that's always related to a login. Set your item for local on login, and that's setting that token to be used on so that's in the browser. And then I'll log out. You want to remove that item. And in this case on register, it's also setting an item for your auth. And you define your other messages, show error, so show success. Kind of the same thing that you did, like I said, for 5-3. Let's see, in main here. So, just make sure that you update this. You'll have to go through all your different files. And make sure you use the browser router in the app. Okay. And add product. Make sure you include your handle submits. Right. Your handle submits. And also always use a relative path. So this is relative to your server, right? You don't want to have localhost, all of that in here, and port number. It's kind of really just best practices, and especially, for your lab assignment, which will become your final project, right? Which is your final project. When you have and try to deploy that to a cloud, if you have a localhost in there, it's going to break. It's going to have problems. It needs to be relative, and then you'll have to, and I'll show you how you do your environment variables so that I'll show you that later, so that it will be able to be deployed to a cloud environment. Okay. All right. Make sure you use your use effect where necessary. Like I said, handle submit, use effect, etc. And as I already mentioned a few times here, as long as if you did well at your 5-3 lab, that'll be a big help for you here. And if you haven't gotten some things working there, you may want to play with that. You've got a week to complete this hands-on test. So you may want to spend a little time on that 5-3 one. and then come in here and do this, you know. And so this hands-on test is important for your grade. So just want to point that out. So let's go ahead real quick and just look at this running. Okay, so here's a login screen. Yours can look a lot different than this. This is just one version of this app, so you know things may be a little different for yours, and they probably should be. So here's just wanted to kind of show you as far as, so here's the email address. So if you kind of just come in here, it's actually going to flag you until you enter a valid email address. So it's looking for that @ sign. So that's how you need to do your Bootstrap validation. That was kind of like one of the last things on the hands-on test. Okay. Okay. And this student has a landing page. You know, you could call yours a home page, whatever. You have to have some. You don't necessarily need to do that, but you know you're going to have at least some kind of links to everything that you're doing, and that includes, in this case, you know, you need to be able to go to products, users, right? Products, users, really. But the other thing you have to be able to do is also access to that -me where you can update your own profile. So this is how this student has done this. You know, this is a little redundant with view all products and view all users because it's the same thing as up here, right? It's what you're basically doing. But this is also the view my profile, which is contact to that me, right? That /me route on your back end. So this is editing your own profile. Products here. Also, you will need to implement some search capabilities. So in this case here, and I think that's going to be on your description or whatever. And so here, just by putting in shirt, it's changing this dynamically like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. You know, you can do it that way, or even if you have to click a button, that's fine, but you know you have to make sure that you are doing a search of the different products. Okay. Here you got add a product, and like I said, yours is going to probably look a lot different. To add a new user, obviously. So here's actually kind of tricky how the student did this because you really to get access. Really, to get access, you know, this flow, you know, probably isn't the best. You know, this is just because to get to register, you're going to have to come back to the login page, click register here. So, but I guess in most cases, somebody coming in at the beginning, that's, you know, you're going to register at the beginning, right? So, but there's your register. Then you want to click to your login screen. So that needs to be consistent, right? So you'll have to do the same on that. And make sure you have a log out that logs out. So it logs out of your auth and also removes your cookie, your local storage, right? So you'll have to do the local storage to remove that item. So that's all I have. Just wanted to kind of go through a few things. Hope it helps you a little bit. So please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.